Welcome back.
I'm here.
Second episode. Off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Literally off the cuff, because look, Ward and I are prepared, and Leroy has nothing.
Oh, I am totally
He
prepared.
doesn't have any cuffs to be off.
There's no cuffs to
No
be
cuffs.
off.
And no papers.
And no papers.
No.
But I have,
But
unlike,
you're ready.
Locked in here.
unlike last week when I talked about exorcisms.
He's going back to it.
Hollywood.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I mean, come on.
It wasn't funny, Leroy.
It's the funniest thing in the world
Nobody thought
that
it was funny.
Hollywood has a non-denominational exorcist. Come on, dude. Funny. It's absolutely funny. I'm not talking about the reality of whether spiritual things and spiritual people exist, but Hollywood having an exorcist. Come on, you cannot. That's funny.
It's giving me hours of joy. Even
It's
since
just
last week, just
hilarious
thinking
to me.
about it,
All
Leroy.
week.
All week.
Yeah.
I've just been,
I've been thinking about it all week.
Been laughing.
We have certainly been enjoying the fact that you brought it up.
Oh,
all
I'm
week.
so glad. I'm glad.
You've been suffering through nobody thought your funny thing was funny. Yeah.
No, I still think it's
been
funny.
heartbreaking.
It's still the funniest thing in the world to me.
So, Ward, you seem extra happy to be on the show today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I am. Well, I've been grading student papers. And so while I'm grading student papers, I decided while I grade them to come up with a list of things I want to give students because there's some argumentative papers that need to write.
You're not giving any names, though, right?
No,
That'd be bad.
no
Some
names.
kind of FERPA violation.
Argumentative paper guidelines, just some guidelines, some things to remember, and in this case, things to avoid. So I have a couple here that I wanted to share. One of them, the first one was this, just how I'm just trying to help them understand how to write a paper, hopefully better than before. Be sure each sentence contains a complete.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that's the first. I think it's very important.
Yeah. To have a complete. Yeah.
To have a complete. You got to have a complete. If you have no complete, you have no
I
thought.
can't tell how many student papers
that
do not have a complete.
That's right. Never let your paper visit the Department of Redundancy. The Department of Redundancy Department. Say it once. Move along.
Why do you think that we visit the Department of Redundancy?
Because there's nothing else to say. You think by saying it twice, it'll fill space.
It'll fill space. That's right.
Exactly.
I mean, all these papers were like, say the same thing, say one thing, then repeat it like 3 more times. Look, it's a paragraph.
Yes.
No, it's not exactly how we craft a paragraph.
One of the pastors I used to pastor with.
You were a pastor?
I was a pastor.
You didn't know
Get out
that?
of here. No.
You didn't know anyone would have happened.
Well, I kind of knew, but I just didn't believe it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just kidding.
If anybody listening, watching, has evidence that Ward was actually serving as a
Pictures.
pastor, we want to see video evidence, photographic evidence. He does talk about it. It's on a resume, but we have no way to validate it. So wasn't like like Alaska or something, or
It was Huron, South Dakota.
South Dakota.
pretty much like
Alaska, exactly.
like 10 people live there.
Yeah, well, it's
How many
cold
people
like
live there?
Alaska, but without hills. So where we were at was
Ooh.
flat.
So not even the good part of mountains.
It was pretty flat. Awesome people, but
How many rich people lived in that town?
10.
12,000.
Really?
Yeah.
That many people live. I didn't know that many.
I think it was
people
about
lived in that entire
12,000.
state.
Margie and I, when we went to
I'm gonna get
pastor,
hate mail now. So.
we went to Warsaw, Illinois, and Warsaw is just a beautiful, beautiful place. I'm saying that it's a beautiful place, but the population was like 2003, and when Margie and I got there, it made it 2005.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then when we left, there's still 2003, and there's probably still 2003.
It's probably
right
declined
now.
since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be great to do a youth ministry. I worked at youth ministry stuff. I just thought it'd be great to do a missions trip because we couldn't go overseas and afford it. So go to we went to Warsaw. And we went to Paris,
Oh,
Paris,
Moscow.
Kentucky,
Yeah,
Moscow,
Idaho.
Idaho. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just try to
Right.
find all the places named after foreign places to do all the youth trips too. And that'd be great.
Perfect.
That'd be the perfect Facebook thread. I've went to Paris.
Yeah.
Didn't say Paris, Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you were actually saying something.
No, it's all right.
No, you were saying about your papers. Go ahead.
No problem.
No, we wanted to.
Well, I was going to say about the repetition, but a pastor did that all the time. He was critiqued by people in the church complaining about him being so repetitious. He got mad and he was pulling out some papers from college, and he pulled it out and he goes, "Oh, look, the professor said on here, repetitious. Can you believe that?" And as the associate pastor, I can't really say much other than oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't
No
believe
one
it.
saw that coming.
Yeah, I didn't see that. But here's another principle I'm going to let them know about. Do not use run-on sentences because not only are they annoying to read, but you will also likely get lost along the way and forget what your point is, and also fail to defend your thesis or even remember what your thesis, or even know which class the paper, and most certainly have incomplete thoughts, which is also annoying. So be sure not to do that ever in any paper in this lifetime, ever. Just stop it. So
I think I've read that paper.
Yeah. I think I've written that paper.
I didn't want to say it, but you did.
no,
Actually,
you write
know,
well.
it'd be just as funny
You
is to
write
actually have real quotes from some of the papers, because I know we've been collecting some.
Oh, no.
We should have some of the real ones.
I do.
There's
Yes.
some we can't use because that would be.
Been saving papers. I have a folder on my computer. It says bad papers.
We should pull out some quotes one of these.
Or we should read mean or bad. Just have a section called reading bad papers.
Yes, reading bad papers.
Oh, we could. Oh, we could
That'd
do
be
that.
great.
That'd be
that
fun.
might be have to be a feature section, just like
Yes.
reading bad papers.
Right.
Yeah, we'll start with all Leroy.
I like that.
Yes.
Oh.
So Leroy's paper. No, you write well, and you write well. So
I write better than he does.
you both-
Yes, I'll give you
Sure.
that.
Oh, thank you.
You felt bad about
I
that
really
whole
feel good about it.
non-funny thing last week, so I'm gonna I'll throw him a bone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was still hurt by it.
I'm not hurt by it. It's just I thought it was just the funniest thing in the world, and I dropped it, and you guys looked at me like, "What's that? That's not funny."
I think part of it.
The spiritual realm is alive and well. It's really spiritual.
Part of it was I think we were, I don't know, I was in like more of a serious thing, serious time, and I'm like going for serious, and then you brought that, so it's like serious, and
Yeah, and then the other part was it just wasn't funny.
And there's that. I'm trying to help him out. You know, I'm trying to be nice.
I'm trying to go back to it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm trying to twist the knife a little bit. Did you have another one?
Oh, I have more, but that's okay.
Okay.
So
Well, good then. I have something that has no relation to that at all. But
of course not.
I'm trying to decide between two things. I have a Bible passage that I was going to read that relates to how we do apologetics, or I have a thing about racial issues that I saw quoted on a Christian's Facebook page that I thought was highly questionable in what they should have even posted. Which one do you want to hear?
Neither one are funny.
No, neither one are funny. That's
Sorry
correct.
about that.
Neither one are funny.
No, neither one are funny, Leroy, so you can be totally serious.
Yeah.
All right. So I can be totally serious.
Yeah, you can pretend it's like your post on the Hollywood spiritual thing. Just not laugh at all.
Man, you're getting a lot of posts or replies on some of the comments you're putting on there. But anyway, I meant to mention that.
Yeah, like 137.
Yeah, like all these replies on. There's a
Yeah, but he replies to himself like 100 times.
100 times. No, 100 of those are mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
He's like, and
Your
thought he does each word as a different reply.
No. So what I do is I have a tactic to get people to talk. I insult them.
Oh,
Yeah, I
nice.
noticed that.
I insult them nicely though.
Okay, now that solves the question. Which one I'm going to start with?
Okay.
Okay,
What are you gonna start with?
so I didn't want to say this was just for Leroy, but now that he brought it up, okay. So I was dealing with this, and actually, this is not necessarily your stuff.
Oh, I know.
But I was looking at this and talking about apologetics because it's such a popular thing now. Everybody's doing it. Everyone's programs. We've got stuff here at the seminary we do, and just the tone and nature of how people do it. But out of 1 Peter 3, I wanted to read this and get your thoughts on what you think that is, the state of this. He says, "Now, who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear then, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ, the Lord is holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason that hope that is within you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. It is better to suffer for doing good, if that should be God's will, than for doing evil." So I think there's a couple things that I find interesting about this, and I actually want to get your take on that. I mean, we always talk about gentleness and respect. We don't really qualify with what that means, just sort of because it's a rather subjective thing. You know, what Leroy might say is gentle, I might think is harsh or whatever. So it's fairly subjective.
Or what he might think is funny, we might think is not.
Not funny. Yeah, that's true. But he says this. It's like, this is the part where I think I look online, especially. We talk about how ineffective online is, but I've even seen people do this in real life. He said, when you are slandered, for your good behavior, he's essentially saying, let them be put to shame, not by you getting back and the bigger thing, but by your goodness towards them. Because it's better to suffer doing good than to suffer doing evil. So either way, you're going to get suffer because people are going to mock you. But are you going to suffer while doing good, or suffer doing evil but returning evil for evil? What do you think? I mean, like when you look at the state of the way Christians engage on social media or even in real life at times, what do you see this verse being lived out? I mean, are we doing a good job of that or not? What is your take on that?
I don't think you are, but we can talk about.
Wow, that was hurtful. Lack gentleness and respect all at once.
Well, I didn't know how to say it gently.
Yeah.
So, no. I think there are some people that can do it far better and do it well. So,
I think since you asked, I think that we always have to have in mind, and I think you brought it out, that people's response to how we do apologetics is somewhat subjective. I mean, it's based on how they feel. They may not like what you're saying. They may not like how you're saying it. They may not like the fact that you are saying it. I think we have to be wary of that on one level, but we ourselves don't need to be disrespectful and mean-spirited to the other person simply because the other person is where we once were. And I think if we recognize that, that governs our response toward them. It governs how we talk to them, and it governs our attitude. That's one. And I think the overarching principle is, what is the reason why we're in the discussion in the first place? Is the discussion meant to draw this person closer to the Lord? Is it meant to kind of
to win?
Exactly. And listen,
I mean, the latter being bad.
Yeah, and no, exactly. And I've been totally guilty of the winning part because, I mean, again,
I'm trying to win.
Well, yeah.
I wanted you to be humble.
You want to be humble.
That.
Yeah, I know. But being seriously, I mean, I've been totally guilty of the first part simply because you get so passionate about these discussions that you miss that it's not about the battle. It's about, what is our goal?
Yeah.
I mean, it's about winning the war, and the war is not really with that other person.
Yeah.
So, but also it's to win the other person, and if we
to win them, but not win the argument.
Right. I mean, well, we want to win right. We need to make sure we don't make the argument more important than the individual.
Well, yeah. If your goal is to win them,
right.
As a consequence, you'll have to be persuasive in the argument,
right?
Not necessarily win the argument,
right?
I think there's a difference in that.
Explain what you mean by being persuasive.
I think that the argument itself will, at best, you might just plant the seed. They may not concede anything you're giving.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to win in a debate sense. Like you're not going to have victory. You concede, I'm right and you're wrong.
That
rarely happens.
Right.
So I think the goal is to make your argument persuasive, so that people will see that it, even whether they acknowledge or not, that it makes sense. And then sometimes even people reading along. I found actually most of the time when I do discussions or debates online stuff, I always think I'm writing this for people reading, not even the person I'm interacting with.
Right.
Because the person interacting, probably they're not going to change their mind. I mean, I hope they do, but I doubt they will. So I'm writing every response knowing that I have, 50, 100 people reading my response. And I've actually over years had people say, hey, send private messages.
Sure.
I really appreciate the way you dealt with this, and that was helpful. And I have non-believer friends that will write me privately all the time off of threads because they don't want to get into the crazy arguments, but they'll ask me and they explore stuff offline.
Why did you kind of classify them as non-believing friends? Why are they just not your friends?
Because they are my friends. They just don't believe in Jesus.
So why'd you call them non-believing friends?
Because they're not.
I'm starting a fight with you.
I know. Yes. Exactly. Well, it brings up the next verse, 2 Timothy 2:22, which should really heap burning coals upon Leroy's head. It says, flee youthful passions, Leroy. You're an old man now. Flee those youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Now, this context is to other believers, but I think it still applies to non-believers. Have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring. That one's hard. Especially when people say really stupid stuff, to be patiently enduring. And I mean stupid stuff in the most positive, uplifting way possible. concerning his opponents with gentleness, God may grant them repentance leading to the knowledge of truth, and they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil after being captured by him and his will. I think that spiritual component that Leroy so eloquently brought up last week in a bit of humorous story, but the idea that people are trapped in their thoughts, and he gives us this idea that our arguments are not going to win anybody. And I think that there's this conflict often between presuppositionalists and traditional apologists, wrongly, because neither one assumes you can argue anybody into salvation. It's the work of the Holy Spirit. And I think this is that idea that people are trapped in our thinking often, and it's a spiritual battle, and it's a mental battle. But so we can offer our words, but we can only lead them to the truth that's in Christ. And I think we put too much emphasis on our arguments themselves as being the end of the end goal, crafting the perfect argument.
Well, what do you think? And notice I'm asking you this because this is your area of expertise anyway.
Excellent.
And you like that, right?
Excellent.
So what do you think about that? Because I've listened to you and I've learned from you quite a bit over the years. Some good, some bad. But no, okay. But in this, I think when it comes to irenic spirit, particularly when dealing with people, you kind of have that. I've noticed that you're just. I was thinking when I've watched you into these debates that you're way too nice to this person, right? But what's the balance between, because the individual may think that you're being, just by being, cutting it straight, just by being direct, just by answering the question. Might think that you're being arrogant, that you'll be called arrogant for knowing the answer. You know what I mean? What do you think the balance is there? Because is it what I'm getting at, is it really just me speaking nicely to that individual? You catch what I'm saying? Because I can speak nicely, and or as a friend of mine once called it, nice nasty. And I can speak nicely to someone, but is that really what we're aiming at, or is it something else we're aiming at?
Is nice nasty we're aiming at?
No, we're not aiming at nice nasty.
So what's your question?
So my question is,
It was a run-on sentence, by the way.
It was a total run-on sentence. But is it just about demeanor? Is the point? Or is it?
No,
I know it. But
no, you're aware of that. It's not just about demeanor, right? I think part.
Yeah, I see. Oh, okay, like you can have a nice person. Oh, Leroy, that doesn't make you look ugly at all. Like people say nice things, but in a nice way.
Right.
It means so. I know.
You can do sarcasm or whatever, be biting, and we all fall victim to that, or fall into that trap, or allow ourselves to jump into that and do that. And we need to avoid that. But actually, on class on Monday, one of the things I'm going to be introducing is a PowerPoint slide, of course, that shows there's several different realms of which we're battling, and we usually in classes focus on the argument itself, but there's the person's will, there's the person's desires, and so those types, all that gets in conflict. We focus academically on certain things, but as we talk with people, hopefully trying to be able to understand where they're coming from, like understand more than what they're coming from. Like, what, actually the person isn't struggling with this, they're actually struggling with something else behind it. Maybe they're angry at someone. So our demeanor is important, and getting the point is important. But if they're asking, and hopefully they are, and they're getting offended by the response, well, why is the response offensive?
Right.
Why is the conversation even offensive? If you're willing to have the conversation, why are you even offended? Now, I pose that to Christians as well, not just non-Christians. Christians we need to work on, why are you offended by this? Why are you angry? Don't get angry. Get back to the issue.
Everybody's looking for a reason to be offended about something, right?
Absolutely.
That's crazy stuff.
So does that address a little bit?
I found that in conversations when you are just being direct. And when I mean being direct, I don't mean adding any fluff to my response, or but just really answering the question in a straightforward way. I think people get angry with that too. So, and there's always confusion by people.
Angry or hurt? Those are two different things.
I don't know. Well, it's hard to determine hurt over the internet.
Yeah. I thought maybe you're talking about like even private one-on-one conversation.
Private one-on-one, they can see your body language, they can see your face.
Right.
They can hear the tone of your voice. You're not delivering it in an angry way, but that in the medium of online medium, or that's
why you have to qualify. Like, right. What I'm trying to do now is, if I'm engaging in this, I try and qualify. The very first thing I do is, hey, just so you know what I mean, say something nice or kind and go, I'm trying to address this in such a way that, and we can, whatever it might be, we can agree on this point, or at least we agree here, and also you think about that. But thank you very much for. So I try to bookend on social media now. I'm trying to bookend something positive and kind. So there's an inferred intonation because they can't see that. And I've done that. I've done that before.
So you have to go over. You have to go extra.
Smiley faces.
Yeah, no, seriously, you do.
I do.
I just did that with a guy this last week. He private emailed me as a non-Christian that I worked with for years, and he says, "Hey, I wanted to ask me some questions about Peter, and Peter being about slavery. Basically, he's pro-slavery, and I showed that contextually it's not pro-slavery. It's just the slave needs to be like Christ. A person needs to be like Christ, slave or not, no matter what position you're in." And so I said to him, and he and I have joked around a lot before. I said, "So you're going to have to find a different verse in order to be able to justify slavery in your life." Smiley face. Okay. So I thought the smiley face was a dead giveaway, and he just shot right back. And he's like, "There's no verse in scripture that justify." I said, "Yeah, I was just kidding. I was hoping that the smiley face would give it away, but I just want to make sure."
How much of that do you think is
even
a
the
problem
smiley face
in our apologetic approach? Then, I mean, because there's that all that's true. We talked about you need that right apologetic approach with humble attitude, but also words have to be seasoned with salt, kind of stuff. So both matter. But how much of it is just people looking for a reason to be offended in anything you say? Because we live in this very victim culture thing. So I've been holding on to this story for a couple weeks. I want to bring it up because it applies to this.
Okay,
this is a funny one.
Which is funny because this is.
Have you guys?
That goes with one of my things here. It's
Peter Rabbit is a movie. I haven't seen it because my kids are too old.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay,
so you mean the one where the violent one?
That's a Peter Rabbit movie. It's just
no, because with Peter Rabbit, the story it is like violent.
Well, this one I remember seeing a Peter Rabbit.
No, this is brand new. This is a brand new movie that just came out off the children's story, Peter Rabbit.
Right.
The rabbits go into the farmer's yard and steal all the stuff, fruits and veggies or whatever, and eat them all. And so they made it into a movie. One of those like animation deals. Sure. The rabbits talk, all that kind of good stuff. So here's what this article says. Peter Rabbit filmmakers in the studio behind it are apologizing for insensitively depicting a character's allergy in the film that has prompted backlash online.
Oh my gosh.
So it says, in Peter Rabbit, I'm going to read this out of order because I think they wrote the article improperly, so I'm reading the first premise first. So in Peter Rabbit, the movie, which was released this weekend, the character of Mr. McGregor is allergic to blackberries. The rabbits fling the fruit at him in a scene, and he is forced to use an EpiPen. This is high drama. Sony Pictures says Sunday in a joint statement with the filmmakers that food allergies are a serious issue, and the film should have made light of a character being allergic to blackberries, even in a cartoonish slapstick way, a la Bugs Bunny, apparently,
or the Three Stooges.
So here's, I know, right? Yeah. So the charity group, group, Kids with Food Allergies, posted a warning about the scene on Facebook page Friday, prompting some on Twitter to start using the hashtag boycott Peter Rabbit. The group said that allergy jokes are harmful to their community, and that making light of the condition encourages the public not to take the risk of allergic reactions seriously.
Friends of mine. They have a daughter, sweet, precious little girl, and she was having some eye problems. I mean, we're talking about 2 years old. She's having some eye problems, and we're talking about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're not careful. She's gonna become Cyclops." And I looked at them like, "What?" And they looked at me and said, "We decided to embrace it. And they've got to be able to handle jokes, and so we're gonna not mock her about it, but joke about with her kids and teach them it's okay." And I thought, you know what? That's pretty admirable. Not to mock her. But
just to have fun with
it, and it's
which
okay.
we do, by the way, all the time on other issues, whether it's racial stuff or the board being too tall for most humans, and my being insanely handsome. They tease me all the time about that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it's true. I'm learning to live with it.
Hey, can you get your veil back on there?
All right. Conceal my beauty. But yeah, I just read this though, and I'm like, we just look for reasons to be like this might encourage people. There's such a lack of judgment that it's like seriously, is anyone going to say, "Oh, I don't take food allergies seriously because Peter Rabbit did"?
Because of the movie.
I mean, Bugs Bunny, they were Tom and Jerry. They hit each other with frying pans, and nobody says, we're worried today. The Cooking Association of America is worried that these utensils will be used for a way that wasn't intended.
And
like home violence or something like that.
In case you didn't know, more people die, check this out, with household kitchen utensils every year than by guns.
That's probably because of Tom and Jerry. We never had the warning.
Exactly. It's because of the Three Stooges.
Had we had these people warning us years ago, decades ago, people would not be dying today from kitchen utensils because they didn't know that taking a frying pan to somebody's head would fracture the skull.
Yeah.
Would you name a product for me or something that no one can die from?
No, anything can kill at any point. Anything can kill.
Because I was bound to be some allergy or something. I'm just trying to figure out, because you know that whenever you see warning labels or on products, you know someone had to do it. I want to know the person who drove down the freeway with the sun glare protector, because you know when you put that on, it says not to be driven with, right?
Yeah.
Do not drive with this in your windshield. I want to know the person who thought that they could drive with that. Yeah, you know, I'm just saying.
I remember when I was a kid, teenager, and you know, microwaves were pretty new. I remember we got one for the first time.
You didn't do the cat, did you?
No, we didn't do a cat. But
Hamster?
No. We heard about that. Oh my gosh, not my cat. We worried about that stuff. But I remember I opened up a microwave item one time and I read the little thing and it said, "Caution, items may be hot when heated." Maybe. Now, it's not even definitive. Items may be hot when heated. I still use that, and my boys think it's like, they don't get it, but like they'll pull some out of the microwave and say, "Ow, it's hot." And they'll say, "Ow," because that's like, caution. Remember, items may be hot when heated. And now they know, like invariably, somebody grabs something, I'll grab something, I'll burn myself. And
right.
Like,
but you're right. The labels come up because someone
tried it.
Yeah, that's what I was like. It's like, who didn't know?
I was this not to. Do you have something else you wanted to add on that?
No, it's fine. We're good.
I was.
It wasn't funny anyway.
It wasn't really.
Yeah.
I was looking at.
Give him that one.
I know. Thank you. I was looking at the news this weekend, and actually not this weekend. Yesterday, Margie and I were watching the news, and they show these two women in a small store, I think in Nebraska, and their store is getting robbed. And these two women literally pull out their guns and start blazing at the crook. Evidently, they must have missed, and I think one was like 2 feet. It had to be less than 2 feet away. But the crook and the mom are battling. I mean, life and death over the gun. I mean, literally, this is on tape. And the daughter, who was behind the counter, is watching the guy hit her mom in the head with the gun, and ultimately, you know, shoots the guy. And as I was thinking about that, that's absolute. First of all, it's absolutely courageous to be a woman battling with, you know, a crook or a thief or whatever. And you juxtapose that scene there, and you could see the video if you go online, with the police officer who was at the school.
Oh, the coward dude.
And who didn't go in.
Wasn't there 4 of them?
4 of them. There's one in particular.
They have the one, I think, on video. The other 4 don't go in.
And it's very interesting to me because, I mean, 27 years ago, and all my friends on Facebook know, 27 years ago was the cessation of hostilities in the Gulf War. And it was the last day of the war.
That long ago?
It was 27 years ago.
Wow.
And one of my friends brought that up on Facebook, and I was just thinking it's been 27 years ago. And there's something that I've read about courage, and it was this an article, an essay written by a dad to his son, and one line in particular where he was talking about, you know, if you're reading to son, you know, I died. And the dad says to the son, "Don't be upset about me going off to war." And he said this line to his son. He says, "Daddy dead is not so bad. Daddy being a coward is the worst thing that could ever happen."
Ouch.
I know. And I remember, I can't remember anything else, but that line stuck out to me. And I can't help but think of this guy sitting in front of the school, those women battling for their lives with this guy, and this guy sitting out in front of the school with gunshots going on inside of the school and not going in. It's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling.
But see, the one thing that I actually, and I don't have an answer to this, I mean, maybe one of you guys know this. So everybody's, I mean, I get it that he was outside, didn't go in, and, you know, everyone's arguing this, and then the other guys that were there arrived, they wouldn't allow the EMT people to go in and and stuff.
No, that part makes sense.
I always thought that actually it's policy not to go in to an active shooting situation.
From Columbine, they learned that you have to go in.
Okay, so they changed it because I know that, like, I don't have any insight to it. I just wondered.
You mean for the EMTs to go in?
No, the police.
The police,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, police,
I know,
but not
like,
the EMTs.
Active shooter or sometimes in hostage things, they don't send police in. But now, now there's an actual thing where they do send them in. So it is a policy to hold them out. The police.
I've thought about
I didn't know if they were
the guy in particular. And here's what I know. There are some guys that are just not built for that. I think as I've thought about the police officer, and I've thought about it quite a bit, I guess I'm more upset that he stole money. And when I say stealing money, meaning that you took a job,
took a paycheck for all those years.
Took a paycheck for all those years that you were not going to, fulfill. And then when the opportunity came, the cowardice part doesn't bother me that much because I just know in that instance, in the same instance that woman knew, I had to fight for my life. I'm in the fight of my life. And that daughter knew that I needed to aid my mom, not stand on the sidelines. This guy, I mean, he's still a coward.
Yeah.
But in that instance,
he just should have been a cop.
He should have been a cop.
Most people would not go in.
Yeah.
I don't know what none of us know what details were there. But the point is, if you're a cop, you gotta say, regardless of whether I'm afraid or not, it's my duty to go.
Yeah.
That's how you're saying.
Being afraid, it really isn't the issue, as you know.
Yeah.
They should be afraid.
Yeah.
But you still go in.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. That's
it's just a very interesting thing, and it's just in an instant. No one knows what they're going to do, and that guy decided today is not the day I'm going to die. I'm going to hide out here. I'm going to let those kids die.
Well, his response. I don't know if you're familiar with his response. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying his response was that from what they knew and from he thought the shooter was outside, not inside.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that justifies it, but some other ones took up a position when they came with a rifle outside in the parking lot because they thought the shooter was outside. Now, I'm not saying that justifies it. You should have still gone and gotten it. But it was a complicated situation. I think there was
but they got problems down there overall. I mean, the sheriff's they're under investigation for all kinds of stuff. They've been doing stuff.
Sheriff is absolutely
talk about the gun stuff and everything
crazy.
Like that. But the truth is, from what I've heard in the discussions of that, it's pretty wild, man. They've been for years now because federal dollars have been tied to reducing crime rates, and the schools get more money with the fewer kids that get in trouble. So they just basically, the kids have been doing just as bad stuff. They just don't arrest them for them.
Right.
That's because of that program. That's because of a program that says they want to cut the pipeline from school to jail.
Yeah.
So they artificially cut the pipeline.
So,
right. But it didn't prevent any crimes.
No, but they were actually taking evidence from kids they caught doing stuff like drugs or whatever.
Or like this kid.
And they'd break into houses and steal stuff. The cops would catch them, let the kids go, and then they would just put the evidence as unattached into the evidence locker so that they didn't have to report it because they couldn't return it to the families because then they'd have to say where they got it. Mm-hmm. So they would actually find evidence of stuff that was stolen. They would just secret it away so that they didn't have to report anything and therefore not have to report these kids. And therefore they could say, oh, our crime rate is down. Mm-hmm. And now we can get more federal money.
Right.
So all this
it's just about profit and power at that
all
point.
of this is insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So
and you look at all of the institutions that broke down along the way. Mm. I mean, this kid actually called the police and said, you guys need to come get me.
Well, he called the police on himself too.
He called the police himself and said, I need to stop me from what I'm about to do. And
when was that?
This was last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this is knowledge. This isn't.
Wasn't there 39 phone calls to the police department over him?
Even from himself.
Wow.
And the kid is at fault for what he did. You can't absolve him for what he did. I mean, he killed 17 people. But
here you have a gun-free zone.
Right.
You have a cop or someone armed on campus. You have 40 plus phone calls, including from himself. You have laws in place, and it still happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just this confusing thing because I've heard senators and congressmen and women say stuff like, "We can reduce crime by simply." Their goal is not people getting arrested, let's just decriminalize these certain acts, and then we can reduce crime. That was their view of reducing crime: is decriminalize.
Right.
Okay, if somebody gets caught with these drugs,
well, if it's not a crime, then it's not. I mean, if it's not,
yeah. But it doesn't change any actions. It doesn't make the communities any safer.
Sure.
It just says we want to arrest people for certain things. But that's what they use the term of reducing crime. That doesn't reduce crime.
Right.
That just changes the law.
Now, what I like about where this is shifted is this is shifted to a topic that we've talked about on numerous occasions. And this is the chart that we've talked about, where you talk about ethics, socio-political ethics, and then, socio-political ethics, epistemology and metaphysics, and how the conversation always starts at ethics.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Socio-political.
Starts at the socio-political,
yeah,
and rejects the ethics. The ethics are what's right.
Yeah, the normative type of
what's normal, what's right. We never really talk about that.
Yes.
We talk about the politics, because the politics is where the application is.
Yeah, it begins in politics and ends in politics.
Yeah, but we never talk about why. And some of the questions that they're bringing up right now, and I think whoever brought this up, I think was absolutely wise, and I'll go ahead and kill this after this, is the lack of fathers at home.
Yeah.
All these killers that they talk about didn't have a dad at home. And that's insane.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Well, and I think the other issue then.
So on that, I know that you have 3 sons, and you're very careful to connect with your sons, I think, right? What does that look like? What is that? And I know you have kids. What do you do to connect with them? Because what does that mean for the father to be a father in their life?
I think that a lot of that is having regular conversations and hanging out with them on just little things. Like, so my wife is a big stickler for, she doesn't like the kids to walk to school, even though we live fairly close. They could walk easily, and I'm like, just let them walk, whatever. But the other side of that is that the opportunity to even just a 5-minute car ride, you can have great conversations. So my oldest son, I drive him almost every morning to high school. And he's got a little farther than he could walk, but it's just a little 5-minute ride. But invariably every morning, maybe sometimes the radio will be on and something will come up and he'll hear something and I'll turn it off. And then we just have a little 10-minute conversation about whatever the topic of the day is or whatever life is. And so I think it's comprised of a lot of those little things. You can't do it in just one moment. There isn't one. I remember when I was a kid, the whole idea of, have you had the conversation, meaning about sex with kids? And if you've reduced it to the conversation, you've already lost, because there should be lots of the conversations. There can't just be one. And so I think that
the goal being to crack open that little shell of thinking.
It takes a lot of conversations to know just the intricacies of life, what they're really thinking,
what kind of kid they are.
To be open about your own life, your own questions. So we do, like, as you know, taco Tuesdays or Thursdays, or sometimes they're on Wednesdays, and nothing rhymes, so we just have tacos on Wednesdays. But they're really apologetics nights with the kids, and I have a topic in mind, and we've talked about gender issues, homosexuality. We've talked about gay marriage. We've talked about Black Lives Matter. We've talked about, you name the issue that comes up in the newspapers. And my kids are from 10 to 17. And we just say, here's what was in the news this week. What do you guys think? What do your friends talk about? What do your friends say about this issue? What do they think about this?
How would you respond to that issue?
Yeah, and then that's how we just start going and having a conversation. I don't have usually a bigger agenda beyond just, hey, tell me what you think, what your friends think. Well, what do you think about what they say? Or do you say anything? Why or not?
That's a key point. Is that you don't. When I used to drive my football players in the van. Somebody would say something, and I was always waiting for it, not because I had a pre-planned conversation, but because what I wanted to do was to use whatever they brought up as a means to just talk about life.
Yeah.
And to hopefully have an answer to the question. And if we don't have an answer to the question, say, hey, how we can find one? Where can we get one?
Yeah.
Or where to look for an answer, or who to ask about an answer.
Yeah, I think we too often look at raising kids and those conversations as an apologetic event. In other words, or as a debate, like, let's have a starting point and an ending point, and by the end we'll have all the answers and this is where we're at. And it's not. I mean, it's a very long, drawn out thing that takes years of investment of your life and the life of your kids. And there's not one simple conversation that's going to solve it all. because you've got to talk about it, but then they've got to see you live it out in other ways. And then they've got to experience stuff. Like there's conversations that we'll have that'll come up. Like I told you guys last week, or I don't know if this happened after, but my son was afraid to go to school because of the shooting in Florida. And then this message came on that there is the abbreviations of our high school letters, SHS, were on this internet, and he got a text from a friend, or he got whatever it was he got from social media. Hey, there's a threat for SHS. And so he's like, well, what's this? And I look and I see, okay, it's the school in Ohio or something like that. And this is what it was actually, just happened to have the same letters as our thing. And so I said, well, it's not your school, so I want you to go. He's like, but he was really scared. He didn't want to go. He was very uncomfortable with it. And so we've had many conversations about not letting, reality is not determined by your feelings or emotions. Ontology is not determined by how you feel, the being of who we are.
Epistemology.
Yeah, the truth is not determined by who we are. And so I said, so you're feeling this, but there's no reasonable threat for me to keep you back. And so although you're my son, I'll be praying about this whole thing and I'll pray with you before we go, but you're not staying home based on a fear about something that's not based in some rational bit of evidence. And so I was able to, but we've had many, many other conversations about that our feelings can't drive us in the area of sexuality or in the area of anything else. We've had all those conversations. Now there's one that came to have real meaning for him. But I was able to draw on, I think, a lot of those other conversations where he had agreement. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Now it's one that it's his feelings that are involved. He has to learn to apply what he's acknowledged as truth to something else where he's not feeling that truth.
Wait,
and
boys have feelings?
Yeah, they do.
Boys
Believe
have
it or not, that's some good lesson number one.
Yes, they do.
I think he was still mad at me when I came home. He was on the couch, playing some games and stuff, and I think he was still a little grumpy about that I'd made him go because he thought I was being kind of mean by making him go. He didn't really understand. It's really trying to set him up for success in life. Mm-hmm. Then I think he gets it now. And I almost walked up and said, "So, you didn't get you out of school today, did you?" Which I did not say because I figured that might be crossing a line.
Right.
But I thought,
you save that till later.
Yeah, I save it for later.
Yeah. Save it when you're driving in the car.
See, told you, Dad, you didn't get shot, did you, Dad? So,
But I think when you do that, it's in you as a parent, or particularly as a dad, you have to insinuate yourself into your kid's life early and often. You have to get into how they think and why they think the way that they do. You don't have to force them to think a given way, but learning why they think the way they do, and then looking for opportunities to give an answer or a good response to why they think they do the way they do is totally key to helping them reason through some very difficult issues.
Well, it was Josh McDowell gave him some props years ago, and he's had his book, one of the books he said, rules without relationship lead to rebellion.
Yeah.
Very simple premise,
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing. It's like, I said to my kid, he's going, which is a rule, essentially. You're going to school. But outside the context of a pre-existing relationship where he trusts me, he knows I love him, even though he was upset with me at the moment, that's something that maybe he doesn't get over. Like he thinks, oh, my dad doesn't really care if I die today or something. Your kid thinks you don't really care about them. Right. If they have no context for why you're making them do something. Mm-hmm. And I think parents get to these points in their kid's life where the kid comes out of the closet, oh, I'm gay or whatever. And they say, well, this is a sin and it's wrong, or whatever the issue is in their life. But they may not have had any kind of pre-existing relationship. And all the kid sees is, oh, you're trying to put a rule on me because you are hindering my self-expression, or you don't really care about
me being who I am.
Yeah, you don't want me to be the full me or whatever their reason is, but they have no relationship context to think otherwise. Mm-hmm. So you have to give them a context, because your kids are younger now, but that's what you build in from, and I know you're working on it, but that's what you build in from birth until the whole way through.
This comes full circle to the apologetics question you have. The problem that we have in most of our discussions with people that we don't know is we don't have a relationship with them. So when you tell the joke to the guy, with the smiley face, he doesn't know you.
I've known him for 10 years. I worked with him for 10 years.
Yeah, what I'm saying is he doesn't have that friendship relationship with you.
He should have known.
He should have known?
He always should have known.
But,
But in other cases, that's why, yeah. But no, I was actually stunned. Like, come on.
Well,
the problem is he probably does know you.
I think that common issue is, is what we often do is dehumanize people.
Mm-hmm.
We make them less than, and we can do it. So, for example, I had this story related to that shooting last week.
That's a different. I'm going to make a connection. The dehumanization, what we're concerned about as Christians usually is that which is done in the womb. Dehumanize and kill. We can dehumanize relationally.
That's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. So, the day after that shooting in Florida, a kid goes up in South Carolina and he posts this image with holding a gun, saying, it says, "Get ready for round 2."
Oh no!
Tomorrow. Now this kid gets arrested, and he's in juvie, and he's, "Oh, it's just a joke. It's just a joke," and it might have been just a joke.
Right.
But here's the thing: is he had such low regard for the value of human life that it was just funny to him that all these human beings were killed,
right?
So that he could make a joke about killing more human beings. And we look at that as Christians,
right,
and say, "Oh, that's terrible." But we do the same thing in our arguments when we think that winning is more important than acknowledging the God-created value and dignity that's inherent in them with the way we argue. Right. Those things cannot be disconnected, and we do that.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
So, thank you. So, I make no other kind.
Okay.
If you're gonna roll your eyes,
see, I look at the camera.
So don't look at the TV.
How the guy go?
Right in there, roll your eyes.
It's like,
just helping you. It's new. It's fresh. I just want you to know.
Ward, you had something.
Well, kind of tied in as far as human life goes, and also dignity there. What happens in the womb and outside the womb? Because in the womb, dehumanized, so many people are killed. And there's an article that I found today. That was the 3 millionth woman reaches out to pregnancy hotline to reconsider abortion. This happened recently. There's one pregnancy line in America, the only fully staffed, bilingual, 24-hour, 7 days a week pregnancy hotline. It's called Heartbeat International's Option Line.
This is a pro-life group.
There's a pro-life group.
Okay.
Yeah, and someone called that hotline, and they didn't give her name, but it was the 3 millionth woman to call in the past 15 years, which is fantastic.
3 million.
3 million.
Wow.
So, and that's, so it's not just a little bit. And anyway, they were just marking that, and they were very grateful to be able to help out this gal with that. And I found that to be a major praise, major moral praise here in America. It was interesting, though, that it says that the article goes on to say that because of the internet, more women and men are finding pro-life help. 2 things on that. First, it's good they're finding help on the internet. Isn't it sad that they're not finding any help like that from mainstream America?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I mean by that is it's one thing to be pro-choice.
Right.
But if you're actually pro-choice, why not help people where they're at? Well, I'm not sure about that. Well, here are the options if you don't want to do it. And here are the options if you do want to do it.
Well, that's the law in California, not to help people.
Exactly.
I mean, you saw, just to clarify, because
you're right.
Know, like California passed a law that this mandates pro-life centers have a sign that points people to abortion clinics, but they have no sign in abortion clinics that tells people, hey, there's other options for you. Exactly. Matter of fact, that's offensive to put those things that, hey, there's another option, because that will impose guilt or make them feel sad. So they actually have the opposite of what you're saying.
It's just it's just a moral failure, as you all know. I mean, how would you address that? I mean, that's just amazing.
Well,
so
what's interesting is there's tons across the country of pro-life, child rescue centers, so to speak, and
they're not known, are they?
They're not well known,
right.
but they're everywhere. I know that,
and that's intentional too.
And that's intentional.
Secret by the liberal people.
Well, I guess what's interesting to me is, and if those ladies were listening, they would know, is many of them find it very difficult to get help from churches. And some pastors don't want them to come to their church and speak because it's going to dredge up, old feelings or difficult situations.
Oh, you mean like people from the groups?
From the groups, because what they do is they and like I live in North County, and one of the pregnancy resource centers, that's what they call them, pregnancy resource centers, they do the baby bottle drive. You ever seen the baby bottles? So they put out baby bottles, and they just ask you if whatever change that you get, put in the baby bottle, somebody will come and pick it up. But some churches will do that gladly. But it's very interesting to me how many pastors will not allow those women a day to come and address, the congregation about what help is available to them, for fear of because
the people in the congregation have gone through abortion.
Yes, tons have. I think one of the pregnancy resource ladies told me, she said, if Christians, just Christian women alone, or Christian men involved in these relationships would not get abortions, then the abortion industry would dry up and go away.
But do you think it's because they're afraid of offending people that have had it, or I think they're afraid of making what they perceive as taking a political position that will cost them people who are tithers?
It's both.
I think there's a politics.
I think there's both. I don't want to castigate pastors at all, because they have a very difficult job. They absolutely have a very difficult job. But goodness gracious, you got to stand before God one day, and you got to tell him why you didn't allow these women to come and speak in your church for one day. Yeah. And why it was. Look, if there's and I'm looking at the camera and say, if there's ladies in the congregation that have had abortions, look, peel back the scab so that wound can be healed. Goodness gracious. Yeah. Peel back the scab so that wound can be healed. But don't be a coward. Not that I'm calling you one. And not let these women come and minister to the ladies in your congregation, because in California, the numbers of women who have had them are astronomical. And I feel so strongly about it because personally, I mean, I've been in ministry involved in it and full-time in ministry, and I'm just sick and tired of people particularly men, not being man enough, so to speak, to deal with some of the really tough issues. And I know above all people, these guys, they're afraid of having a church, losing members in their church. Well, you're going to lose members anyway. Goodness gracious, you're going to get turnover anyway. But who are you there for? I mean, what are you there to do? And I'm not trying to, just...
If they announced a month in advance, on this Sunday, this is what we're going to be talking about, this is who's coming. So people who don't want to hear it, or maybe it's too sensitive right now, or it's too emotional, that they don't want to show up, okay. But for those who want to show up and want it addressed, they can be there. And I'll bet some people from the community would come out.
I've seen women. I've seen women who have, come forward and acknowledge, and of course they were broken, weeping. But boy, they're different people after the fact. They're different people. The weight and the burden and the guilt that we're forcing them to live with because we want to address the issue, is dealt with.
That never gets talked about, the spiritual, emotional consequence of abortion on women's lives. Right. We've had just a shout out because Lynn Smith, who is a friend of mine, went to Nigeria years ago, but she graduated here with her. She got a master's degree. I don't know if you probably had one of her classes. Yeah. Real great writer. She does a great job.
She's very good.
But she got a job after graduating here with her master's degree in Oklahoma. She works for Crisis Pregnancy, so she's the director of one of those centers.
Oh, now. Very nice.
So she's very excited because I think all her theological education works well into that part of ministry, and she can go to churches and speak and converse intelligently about not just the pregnancy issues, but theologically and stuff. So it's a great equipping thing for her. So just shout out for that. But I think one of the things you get, and I remember hearing this, 20 plus years ago, was just the idea, well, if you're pro-life, all you got to do more than care about is stopping abortion. You have to care for women, which is such a red herring because groups like these hotlines, there are groups that give their whole existence to helping women who don't want to have an abortion find a way to make financial means to have the baby, or to wait and give out the baby for adoption, or to keep the baby and help them get taken care of. See, that happens all over the country, all over the place. Right. It's a very whole life issue, not just a we oppose abortion issue. Right. But that's not publicized. Like you said, people don't know it because that would defeat that whole argument that, you're just really hypocrites because you
only care about the baby when it's in the womb, but you don't care after.
About the woman. You don't really care about the woman that's there.
Nonsense. Just nonsense. It's just a nonsense.
Because it is a whole life issue, and there are churches that fail, like you say. But
and I'm not trying to. And look, we know. I mean, pastors have a tough job. But I will tell you,
Yeah, it's not that hard.
you've been called to that job.
But stop complaining.
You've been called to that job.
We're not trying to create another victim group.
Right. Well, no, we are. We're the pastors.
Pastors Anonymous.
Pastors Anonymous. But that, you know what? That also kind of chimes in on is the now.
We're not even that busy half the time.
I know.
These guys that say, "Oh, I'm too busy."
They're playing golf. No.
They're just up. They're not even busy.
Yeah. But here's what's funny.
I've been in ministry full time. I don't care if you're mad. I just think it's a bunch of work.
I'm just trying not to be mean.
I'm trying to make people mad.
Yes.
I want to make them mad, Leroy.
But what do you think about? And what do you think about the whole thing now, where they're saying, well, thoughts and prayers, they're good, but they don't do anything. You know, that's the new.
They don't stop bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So neither do laws.
Right. Apparently.
So
Yeah.
Neither do gun-free zones.
Apparently.
So anyway.
I wrestled with that years ago because I had a lot of former youth kids that we talked about, we'll pray for these circumstances. And they're like, well, I want to do something practical. So to them, in their mind, prayer was impractical.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I said to myself, why is that the case, that they feel that way? And I think that in part because we, one, misunderstand the purpose of it. In those cases of prayer isn't meant to stop a bullet. Prayer is meant to change hearts and change
Mm-hmm.
lives.
Exactly.
So that's one area of misunderstanding. But two, I think that in many churches, we don't see prayer as actually having
Value.
effective power to do anything. Prayer is not treated as a powerful thing, a communication with God in which real change can have effect, can take effect, but just sort of as this perfunctory ritual we go through. So Mike Pence, who says, the vice president, he says he prays to God, hears God's voice, The View, Joy Behar, those people mock him and make fun of him because this idea of somehow that there could be a real God who we really pray to, that we really hear from, that actually changes our hearts and minds, that does change lives. Like people who call in as an answer to prayer and then they don't abort their baby, they don't kill the baby because they realize there's another. Those are all answers to prayer.
Sure.
There's a guy I heard on the radio, and I didn't catch the name of the organization. They deal with youth suicide and gun violence stuff. They get hundreds of calls, thousands a year, and he was on the radio talking about this, and it doesn't get promoted at all, that this is a religious group that has this hotline that they do, and they say they have kids throughout the year all the time who will say, you know what, I'm this close to doing all of these shooting things. They've saved kids from the brink of either killing themselves or killing others because of being able to connect them with God, and that's all as a result of prayer. So when you get the ignorance of people saying, well, prayer doesn't do anything, I want to do something practical, it's partly because we treat it that way, partly because we don't know the truth of what prayer has changed in people's lives. And
there's no real way of aggregating it or counting it this side of heaven.
Yeah.
You can't count it this side of heaven. You don't know how many mass killers.
Right.
I had a question in that.
Exactly.
I had a question in
they're doing it on a negative. Prove me the negative.
I had a question in a discussion that I was having with a guy, and his whole point was, so what's the point of all this? And my point was, you don't know what God has prevented. You know what's happened, but you don't know what's been prevented. You don't have a way of knowing what's been prevented. And and this goes out to Christians, when we actively get involved or engaged in another person's life, and that person changes for the better, right? You not only affect that person if they've changed for the better. In other words, if they've come, out of this darkness and into the light of Christ, you've changed their family. Yeah. You change their children, because now this person isn't going to be the kind of crazy person who's going to raise.
What trap would they be on 10 years?
Exactly.
Now, that they become that kind of person that would do something that they weren't there at the end. And
that's
so
right.
There's a preventative.
That's exactly right. But you can't quantify that. You can't count that in books or on the news, and the news will never be able to quantify that. So to listen to these people make these statements is just, to give it any weight, is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Plus, it's like the prayer needs to stop that, and not, as mentioned before, change a heart.
Right. Yes.
It's like, do this. I want to see this. Well, it doesn't work that way. And also, there's a false view of society that somehow we can make all these laws and all of a sudden have utopia here on earth, this side of heaven, by ourselves without the Lord. It's just not going to happen. There are wicked people out there, and our policies, our life policies and other policies needs to account for the wickedness of people. There are some horrible people. There's two MS-13 guys that murdered a couple gals that were in court, and they were pondering if they should be put to death or not, and they were laughing as they're talking about what they're guilty of, and they're already convicted. They're laughing about the two girls that they murdered, and the family members are sitting right there.
Yeah. Right.
And these are some horrible, wicked people. And if our policies can't account for that, then our policies set up everybody for failure.
Right. Well, there's a problem. So many Christians have lost that sense of value of human life.
Yes.
Because we no longer have a worldview that says life is valuable. Because we've eroded the foundation of authority of Scripture, even for many Christians. We don't see that as valuable anymore.
It's been watered down.
We just take these sense that it's an affirmation of my faith. But as the culture shifted, so has they've had a faith without foundation, and so they just shifted with the culture. And it's very sad.
You said at the beginning when you read the verse,
and this will be about our last hour because we're about ready to wrap up here. So we'll let you.
The verse that you read, I think from 1 Peter, the first words struck in my mind, and it thought, laws are no terror to the good. Laws are no terror to the good. If a person is, relatively good, and I'm not talking about salvifically, but relatively a good person, just because you put in a law doesn't mean that you're going to restrain their behavior, because their behavior isn't desirous to break the law in the first place. The laws are terror to evil. The laws are meant to be a terror to evil, but even the laws don't stop evil. They just tell evil that your actions or the things that you desire to do are wrong.
Yeah, they give a consequence.
They give you a consequence for it, but they don't prevent you from doing anything. So you can put 1 million gun laws on the books that you want. They've been killing people with airplanes. They've been killing people with trucks and knives. Hands and feet kill more people than guns. Think about that. People's hands, these appendages, hands and feet kill more people than guns. Baseball bats, sporting equipment kills more people than guns. You can make all the laws in the world that you want. They do not restrain evil. They only tell evil that what you want to do is evil. They don't stop people from doing that, because the problem isn't the law. It's not the gun. It's not the hand. It's not the bat. It's that people, our wills we're broken. We're fallen people.
Yeah, we need to definitely. I mean, that's part of what I think we want to accomplish here on this thing, off the cuff, is this idea of getting that Christian worldview. How does it impact the way we treat all these things in life that we're experiencing and go through? Ward, give a final word while I walk over and get ready to shut that off about when we're doing this and what time and they are.
Hey, you know what? Talk about your apologetics class too, because that's a good thing.
All within the next 30 seconds.
You got 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, first, if we're going to take morality seriously at all, it has to be objective. Otherwise, we have no complaint against anyone else whatsoever. But everyone does complain about everyone else, regardless of which side. There is an objective morality out there, and that's based in God and His nature and character. Scripture gives us a great understanding of who He is and what we need to do: repent of our sin and come to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. Shy of that, we haven't taken the proper step in our own life to address issues of morality or be able to have a basis to be able to help other people out. As far as the apologetics classes go, we have a number of them here at Southern California Seminary, and we have an excellent apologetics program called MAPA, which is Masters of Apologetics, Masters of Philosophy and Apologetics. Highly recommend that course, that degree. It has a number of apologetic courses in it. So, was there a class in particular you were talking about?
No.
So
we have like no class. It's like no class.
We have about 6 core apologetics courses. Some people think if you read a book, which is good, or take a class, which is good, to understand apologetics.
You said 30 seconds, right?
But you got them started.
You did. Well, I was going to do. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
But the need to be able to understand apologetics as far as all the ins and outs. There's a lot of details. These classes cover the core issues and will set you up for great success. Highly recommend it.
I'll just edit them out later anyway.
Okay.
You're really just supposed to say we're here.
I was going to
2 o'clock,
but I didn't want to leave this question.
Now I said it, so now it's
so next week, 2 o'clock.
Be there or be
off the cuff again.
Yes.
Off the cuff.